David Carter adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror of his decade-old Honda Accord, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. The wedding invitation had arrived 3 months ago, and he'd nearly thrown it away. Who wanted to watch their cousin marry into the family of their first love? But his 13-year-old daughter, Emma, had insisted, saying it would be good for him to get out more, and if being a single father working two jobs left much room for a social life. Now here he was, parked outside the grandest hotel in Boston, about to face the woman who'd broken his heart 17 years ago. His phone buzzed with a text message. The screen displayed his landlord's name. "Rent past due, need payment by Monday." David sighed and silenced the phone, tucking it into his jacket pocket. Another problem for another day. "Dad, you look like you're about to face a firing squad." Emma's voice cut through his thoughts. She was fixing her own hair in the passenger side mirror, her dark eyes so like her mother's, studying his reflection with that discerning gaze that always seemed too mature for her age. "I'm fine, sweetheart," David replied, straightening his only suit purchased for job interviews and funerals, now pressed into service for his cousin Tyler's wedding. Emma rolled her eyes. "You've been staring at yourself for 5 minutes. Your tie is fine. Besides, you need to talk to actual humans sometimes instead of just your wooden projects." David forced a smile. "My wooden projects don't talk back or charge me hourly rates." "Is it because Ms. Harrison might be here?" Emma asked her innocent question, landing like a punch to his gut. David's hands froze on the steering wheel. "How do you know about Samantha Harrison?" "I found an old photo in your toolbox when I was helping you look for that special chisel last month." Emma's voice softened. "You two looked happy. College, right? You were both wearing Harvard sweatshirts." A flash of memory, Samantha and him hunched over computer code in the engineering lab. Her brilliant mind-making connections, his couldn't quite grasp her laugh when he'd suggest an unconventional solution. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about changing the world through technology. "That was a lifetime ago, David said, turning off the ignition. "Samantha Harrison is CEO of Harrison Technologies now. She's probably forgotten all about me." "You kept her picture in your toolbox for 17 years, Dad. That's not nothing." David cleared his throat, uncomfortable with his daughter's perception. "Let's focus on Tyler's wedding, okay? We don't want to be late." As they approached the hotel entrance, David slowed his pace, mentally calculating how much of their emergency fund this valet parking would cost. He'd already splurged on Emma's new dress, a deep blue that matched her eyes, in his own dry-clean suit. These were expenses they could ill afford, but he wanted Emma to fit in with the wealthy crowd they'd be joining today. "Should I park in the garage?" David muttered, more to himself than to Emma. Emma looked at him knowingly. "Dad, it's okay to use the valet. It's not like we do this every weekend." Reluctantly, David handed his keys to the uniformed attendant, wincing slightly at the fee. He guided Emma through the grand lobby, its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, a stark contrast to their small rented apartment in Somerville. The same apartment where he'd spent last weekend patching a leak in the ceiling because the landlord claimed he couldn't get a plumber until next month. Outside the ballroom, David hesitated, adjusting his cuffs, a nervous habit from college that he'd never quite shaken. Emma stood beside him, seemingly unfazed by the opulence surrounding them. "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Toto," David whispered. "Good thing we're in Massachusetts, then," Emma quipped, taking his arm and pulling him forward. As they approached the guest book, David overheard two elegantly dressed women speaking in hushed tones. "Samantha Harrison. Yes, that Samantha Harrison. The one Forbes called the most formidable, self-made female CEO in Silicon Valley. I heard she just closed a $1 billion acquisition deal." "What's she doing at a Boston wedding?" "The bride is her goddaughter, apparently, although I heard she grew up around here before building her tech empire." David's pulse quickened. So she was here. After all these years, he was about to see Samantha again. Not just the Samantha he remembered, the brilliant, passionate computer science student with dreams of changing the digital landscape, but Samantha Harrison, tech mogul and billionaire. Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," he lied, steering them toward their assigned table near the back of the room. "Just didn't expect the place to be so fancy." The ceremony proceeded with all the elegance money could buy. Tyler looked happier than David had ever seen him, standing at the altar in a tuxedo that probably cost more than David's monthly salary. The bride, Madison, was radiant as she walked down the aisle on her father's arm. Emma leaned in close. "She's beautiful," she whispered, and David nodded, trying to focus on the ceremony rather than scanning the crowd for a familiar face. After the vows were exchanged and the newlyweds made their way back down the aisle, guests were ushered to an adjacent ballroom for the reception. The space was transformed into a wonderland of white flowers and twinkling lights, with a string quartet playing softly in the corner. David guided Emma toward the buffet, determined to at least get a decent meal out of this anxiety-inducing experience. "The food looks amazing," Emma commented, piling her plate with delicacies David couldn't pronounce. "Much better than our usual Friday night pizza." "Don't get used to it," David joked, reaching for the mashed potatoes, a familiar safe harbor in this sea of culinary extravagance. The serving spoon was halfway to his plate when he heard a laugh that stopped him in his tracks. A laugh he would recognize anywhere, even after 17 years. His hand froze midair, the mashed potatoes momentarily forgotten. "You always did love potatoes," came a warm, feminine voice from behind him. David turned slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. And there she was, Samantha Harrison, more beautiful than he remembered. Her dark hair was shorter, now falling in elegant waves around her face, and she wore a simple but clearly expensive navy blue dress that accentuated her figure. Her eyes, those intelligent, piercing eyes, hadn't changed at all. "Samantha," he managed, placing the spoon back in the dish before he dropped it. "I didn't expect to see you here." Her smile was genuine, reaching her eyes in a way that made his chest ache. "Madison is my goddaughter. I wouldn't miss this for the world." She paused, studying him. "It's been a long time, David." 17 years, he said automatically, then felt foolish for keeping count. "You look good," she said, and he almost laughed at the polite lie. "You too," he replied, and that was no lie. She looked incredible, with a poise and confidence that seemed to radiate from within. There was something else, too, a subtle aura of authority he didn't remember from before. An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with unasked questions and unspoken regrets. "So," they both started at the same time, then laughed nervously. "You first," David offered. "I was just going to ask what you've been up to all these years," Samantha said, taking a sip from her champagne flute. Before David could answer, Emma appeared at his side, eyeing Samantha with undisguised curiosity. "Dad, they're about to cut the cake," Emma said, then extended her hand to Samantha with startling maturity. "I'm Emma Carter." Samantha's eyes widened slightly as she took in the girl, then softened as she shook Emma's hand. "Samantha Harrison, it's lovely to meet you, Emma." "Are you the Samantha my dad used to date in college?" Emma asked bluntly, ignoring David's mortified expression. "I found your photo in his toolbox. He keeps it with his favorite chisels." David wished the floor would open up and swallow him whole. Of all the things Emma could have said, Samantha's laugh was like wind chimes. "I am indeed. Your dad and I were close once." Her eyes met David's, a spark of something unidentifiable flashing between them. "Very close." "Emma," David intervened, his face burning, "why don't you go save us some cake?" His daughter gave him a knowing look, but complied, leaving him alone with Samantha again. "She's beautiful, David," Samantha said softly. "You must be very proud." "She's my whole world," he admitted. "Smart as a whip, gets straight A's without even trying." "Just like her father, then," Samantha smiled. "You were always the smartest person in the room." David shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Not smart enough to finish college." Something flashed in Samantha's eyes. Surprise, perhaps disappointment. "You didn't graduate, but you were so close." "Life happened," he said simply, not wanting to get into his financial struggles. The rushed marriage when Emma's mother got pregnant, the divorce, the years of scraping by. "Anyway, what about you? I heard you went to law school." Samantha nodded, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "I did. Then business school. Now I run Harrison Technologies." She glanced around as if checking who might be listening, then added, "It keeps me busy." Before David could probe further, the DJ announced the cake cutting, and they were swept along with the crowd. For the rest of the evening, David caught only glimpses of Samantha across the room, always surrounded by people who seemed to hang on her every word. She moved through the crowd with an ease that spoke of someone accustomed to being listened to, respected. As the night wound down, David was gathering their things, preparing to leave, when Samantha approached their table again. "Leaving so soon?" she asked, a note of disappointment in her voice. "It's getting late, and Emma has a science project to finish tomorrow." David explained, though in truth he was also eager to escape the reminder of what might have been. "Of course," Samantha said, then hesitated. David, it was really good to see you again. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Maybe we could catch up properly sometime, she suggested. Coffee, perhaps. David was stunned by the invitation. I'm sure that would be nice. Samantha smiled, pulling a business card from her small clutch and handing it to him. My personal number is on the back. Call me. David took the card, his fingers brushing against hers, sending a jolt of electricity up his arm. I will, he promised, though part of him doubted he'd have the courage. As they drove home, Emma was uncharacteristically quiet, staring out the window at the passing city lights. You okay, Em? David asked, concerned by her silence. She likes you, Emma said, finally turning to face him. Samantha, I could tell. David shook his head, focusing on the road. It's not like that. We're just old friends. Dad, I'm 13, not 3. I know what it looks like when someone's interested. She paused. And I think you like her too. David didn't deny it, which was answer enough for Emma. You should call her, Emma declared. Promise me you will. David sighed the business card, burning a hole in his pocket. We'll see, Em. We'll see. 3 days later, David still hadn't called. He'd taken the business card out dozens of times, staring at the elegant, embossed lettering on the front. Samantha Harrison, Chief Executive Officer, Harrison Technologies. The title had surprised him. She'd downplayed her position considerably. A quick internet search had left him reeling. Harrison Technologies was a multi-billion-dollar technology and investment firm with offices in 12 countries. Samantha wasn't just a corporate lawyer or even a typical CEO. She was running one of the largest privately owned companies in the country. Her net worth was estimated at over $3 billion. No wonder she'd seemed so poised, so confident. The girl he'd known in college, brilliant but uncertain about her future, had become a titan of industry. And what was he? A carpenter with a mountain of debt and a mortgage he could barely afford. He was about to put the card away again when his phone rang. Emma calling from her friend's house where she was spending the night. Dad, have you called her yet? She demanded without preamble. Emma, it's complicated. No, it's not. You're just scared. David sighed. When had his daughter become so perceptive? Maybe I am. She's not the same person I knew, Em. Neither are you, Emma pointed out logically. That's how time works, Dad. People change. Doesn't mean you can't like who she is now. David glanced at the card again at the handwritten number on the back. What if she's just being polite? Then you'll have coffee, catch up, and that's it. But what if she's not? Emma's voice softened. Dad, you've spent my whole life taking care of me. Maybe it's time you let someone take care of you too. After hanging up, David sat for a long time, Emma's words echoing in his mind. Finally, with a deep breath, he dialed the number. Samantha answered on the third ring. This is Samantha. Samantha, it's David. David Carter from the wedding. There was a pause, and he was about to apologize for calling when she spoke, her voice warm. David, I was hoping you'd call. They arranged to meet for coffee the following afternoon at a small cafe halfway between his job site and her downtown office. David spent the morning in a state of nervous anticipation, checking his watch every few minutes, earning good-natured ribbing from his coworkers. Hot date Carter, his foreman teased during their lunch break. Just coffee with an old friend, David replied carefully, sanding the edge of a custom bookshelf he was building for a client. Must be some friend. You've checked your watch 10 times in the last hour. David didn't respond, focusing instead on the wood grain beneath his fingers. Working with wood centered him always had. There was something deeply satisfying about transforming raw lumber into something beautiful and functional. The precision required the attention to detail. It spoke to the part of him that had once excelled in engineering courses. He arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a table by the window. His palms were sweaty, and he felt ridiculous, like a teenager on a first date rather than a 40-year-old man meeting an old college friend. When Samantha walked in, every head turned. She wore a simple white blouse and dark tailored pants, her only jewelry, a pair of pearl earrings, and a slim watch. But she radiated an elegance that made the casual outfit look like high fashion. David, she smiled, sliding into the seat across from him. Thank you for calling. Thank my daughter, he admitted. She practically ordered me to. Samantha laughed. I like her already. She seems like a remarkable young woman. She is, David agreed, his pride evident. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. They ordered coffee, and for a while the conversation flowed easily as they caught up on the superficial details of their lives. David told her about Emma's achievements in school, her passion for science and math, how she was already talking about college despite being years away. Samantha shared stories about her travels, the places her work had taken her, carefully avoiding any mention of her obvious success. It was only when they'd finished their second cup that David finally addressed the elephant in the room. So, CEO of Harrison Technologies, that's impressive. Samantha looked down, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. It wasn't the plan originally. My father built the company, and I was just working in the legal department when he got sick. Cancer. She took a deep breath. He asked me to step in temporarily, and well, temporary became permanent. I'm sorry about your father, David said sincerely, remembering the intimidating man who'd never quite approved of his daughter dating a scholarship student. Thank you, she looked up, meeting his eyes. What about you? You mentioned you didn't finish college. David took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the only path forward. I left in my final semester when Emma's mother got pregnant. We got married. I started working construction to support us, and college just never happened. He shrugged, trying to sound casual about the abandoned dreams. Then Jennifer left when Emma was 3, and it's been just the two of us ever since. Samantha's expression was compassionate without a trace of pity. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, he acknowledged. Still isn't sometimes, but Emma's worth every struggle. And carpentry, do you enjoy it? David smiled, genuine for the first time. I do, actually. I love working with my hands, creating something real and tangible. I've specialized in custom furniture now. It doesn't pay as well as the construction jobs, but it's more satisfying. Samantha leaned forward, clearly interested. Do you have photos of your work? Surprised and pleased by her interest, David pulled out his phone, showing her pictures of his latest projects, a hand-carved dining table, a set of bookshelves with intricate inlay work, a rocking chair made for Emma's teacher who was expecting her first child. David, these are beautiful, Samantha said, her admiration genuine. You're an artist. I wouldn't go that far, he demurred, though her praise warmed him. I would, she insisted. Have you ever thought about opening your own shop, focusing on custom pieces full-time? David shrugged. The dream's there, but the capital isn't. Custom work doesn't pay the bills consistently enough yet. Samantha nodded thoughtfully, and for a moment David feared she might offer financial help, a prospect that filled him with both hope and dread. But she changed the subject, gracefully, asking about his parents, his cousin Tyler, mutual friends from their college days. As their coffee date extended into early evening, David found himself relaxing, remembering why he'd fallen for Samantha all those years ago. She was still the same in the ways that mattered, intelligent, thoughtful, with a laugh that made him want to keep talking, just to hear it again. But there was a new depth to her, a confidence and wisdom that came from years of making difficult decisions and shouldering responsibility. When they finally parted, standing outside the cafe as the sun began to set, Samantha hesitated. I'd like to see you again, David, if you're interested. I'd like that too, he said, surprised by how much he meant it. The gap between their worlds seemed less important now than the connection he still felt with her. There's a gallery opening next weekend, she suggested. Nothing too formal. Would you like to come, Emma, too, if she's interested in art? David smiled. Emma would love that, so would I. As he drove home, David felt lighter than he had in years. He wasn't naive enough to think anything would come of this reconnection. Their lives were too different, the gulf between them too wide. But for now, it was enough to have Samantha back in his life, even if only as a friend. Emma was waiting when he got home, practically bouncing with anticipation. How was it? Did you talk about old times? Did she ask about me? Are you going to see her again? The questions tumbled out in rapid succession. David laughed, dropping his keys on the counter. Yes, to all of the above. In fact, she invited us both to an art gallery opening next weekend. Emma squealed with delight. Us, both of us. She wants to meet me properly. She does, David confirmed, touched by his daughter's excitement. She said you seemed remarkable. She's right, I am. Emma grinned. So, do you like her? Like her. David rolled his eyes at the teenage terminology. We're just reconnecting as friends. And don't get ahead of yourself. But even as he said it, David knew he was lying to himself. The feelings he'd had for Samantha in college hadn't disappeared. They'd just been dormant, waiting for the spark of her presence to ignite them again. The week passed in a blur of work and routine, but David's thoughts kept returning to Samantha. He found himself wondering what she was doing, if she was thinking of him too. It was ridiculous, this schoolboy infatuation at his age, but he couldn't seem to help it. The gallery opening was in a trendy part of Boston that David rarely visited. He and Emma dressed in their best, him in his one good suit again, her in the blue dress they'd bought for a school concert last year. "You look beautiful, Em," David said as they approached the gallery, suddenly nervous about the evening ahead. "So do you, Dad," Emma replied, then frowned. "I mean handsome, not beautiful. But you know what I mean." David laughed, grateful for his daughter's ability to ease his anxiety. They entered the gallery, immediately overwhelmed by the crowd of well-dressed patrons sipping champagne and discussing the modern art that covered the walls. "David, Emma." Samantha's voice cut through the noise, and they turned to see her approaching, radiant in a simple red dress that made David's heart skip a beat. "You came," she said, as if she doubted they would. "We wouldn't miss it," David replied, trying not to stare. Samantha turned to Emma, her smile warm. "I'm so glad you could join us, Emma. Your father tells me you're interested in science and math." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Especially physics. I want to be an astrophysicist someday." "That's wonderful," Samantha said, clearly impressed. "I have a friend who works at MIT's astrophysics department. Perhaps I could introduce you sometime." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? That would be amazing." David watched their interaction with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. Samantha was being incredibly kind, but he couldn't help feeling that she was offering glimpses of a world he could never provide for Emma on his own. As the evening progressed, David noticed how people deferred to Samantha, how conversations hushed slightly when she approached. It was subtle but unmistakable. She was someone of importance, of influence. Yet she seemed oblivious to it, focusing her attention entirely on David and Emma, guiding them through the exhibition, explaining pieces that caught their interest, introducing them to the artist, as if they were the most important people in the room. Later, as Emma became engrossed in conversation with a young sculptor whose work she admired, Samantha drew David aside. "She's incredible, David," she said softly. "You've done an amazing job raising her." "Thank you," he said, watching his daughter gesture animatedly as she discussed the artwork. "She makes it easy." Samantha studied him for a moment. "You're different than I remember." "Older, more tired," he joked. "More grounded," she corrected. "More at peace with yourself." David considered this. "I suppose that's what responsibility does. When Emma came along, I had to grow up pretty fast." "It suits you," Samantha said, her gaze lingering on his face. "You always had this restless energy in college, like you were searching for something. You don't have that anymore." "Because I found what matters," he said simply. Something flashed in Samantha's eyes, a longing perhaps that surprised him. "I envy that certainty," she admitted. "My life looks perfect on paper, but sometimes I wonder." She trailed off as they were interrupted by a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. "Samantha, darling," the man said with practiced charm, "the Hendersons are asking for you. Something about that Singapore deal." Samantha's expression shifted subtly, a professional mask sliding into place. "Of course, Michael. This is David Carter, an old friend." She turned to David. "David Michael Williams, my CFO." The men shook hands, Michael's grip firm, his assessment of David swift and dismissive. "Carter, good to meet you." He turned back to Samantha. "Don't be too long. The Hendersons are significant investors." As Michael walked away, Samantha turned to David apologetically. "I'm sorry, I need to go handle this." "Business doesn't wait," David said, understanding. "Will you be all right?" "I shouldn't be long." She squeezed his arm gratefully before moving away, immediately surrounded by people vying for her attention. David watched her go, the gulf between their worlds yawning wide again. Emma rejoined him, her eyes bright with excitement. "Dad, this is amazing. Did you see the sculpture made from recycled tech parts? And Samantha knows everyone." "She does," David agreed, not wanting to dampen his daughter's enthusiasm. Emma's expression turned sly. "And she can't take her eyes off you when you're not looking." "Emma," David warned. "It's true, she likes you, Dad. A lot." David sighed, leading Emma toward a less crowded part of the gallery. "It's complicated, Em. Samantha and I, we live in different worlds now." "So," Emma challenged, "why does that matter if you care about each other?" The simple logic of a 13-year-old, David thought ruefully. If only adult relationships were that straightforward. Samantha rejoined them half an hour later, apologizing profusely for the interruption. She seemed different now, more guarded, the weight of her responsibilities visible in the slight tension around her eyes. Work never ends, does it? David said sympathetically. Apparently not, she agreed with a tired smile. But I'm glad you're still here. Are you hungry? There's a wonderful little restaurant around the corner. They accepted the invitation, and dinner proved to be more relaxed than the gallery. Samantha seemed to shed her CEO persona as they talked, becoming again the woman David had spent the afternoon with at the cafe. Emma, initially starstruck by the upscale restaurant, soon relaxed too, chattering about school, her friends, her dreams of space exploration. As the evening drew to a close, Samantha insisted on picking up the check despite David's protests. Outside the restaurant, she hesitated. I have a favor to ask, she said, uncharacteristically uncertain. My family has a lake house about 2 hours from here. I'm heading up there next weekend to get away from work for a few days. Would you both like to join me just for Saturday or the whole weekend if you can? David was taken aback by the invitation. A weekend away together seemed like a significant step. Emma, sensing his hesitation, jumped in. We'd love to, right, Dad? David looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Samantha's cautiously optimistic one. Yes, we'd like that. But are you sure I don't want to impose on your vacation time? You wouldn't be, Samantha assured him. The house is far too big for just me, and I'd enjoy the company. Truly. And so it was arranged. The following Friday afternoon, David picked Emma up early from school, and they drove north following Samantha's directions to a secluded lake in New Hampshire. As they turned onto a private road, Emma gasped at the scenery, pristine forests surrounding a crystal-clear lake, the afternoon sun glinting off the water. Dad, it's like a postcard, she exclaimed, pressing her face against the window. David had to agree. It was beautiful, peaceful, in a way that made the tension in his shoulders a constant companion these days begin to ease. They rounded a bend, and the lake house came into view. David nearly drove off the road. House was an understatement. The structure before them was a magnificent modern lodge, all glass and stone and timber, sprawling along the lakeshore with multiple decks and what appeared to be a private dock. Whoa, Emma breathed. Samantha must be like super rich. Emma, that's not polite, David admonished, though he was thinking the same thing. He'd known Samantha was successful, but this property spoke of wealth beyond what he'd imagined. Samantha was waiting for them on the main deck, casual in jeans and a light sweater. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She waved as they parked, coming down to meet them, with a warmth that eased David's sudden discomfort. You found it. Welcome to my favorite place on earth, she said, embracing Emma first, then David, her touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary. This is incredible, David said honestly, taking in the surroundings. How long has your family had this place? My father built it about 20 years ago, Samantha explained, leading them inside. It was his retreat from the business world. Now it's mine. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior, soaring ceilings, a massive stone fireplace, walls of windows overlooking the lake. But despite its grandeur, it felt comfortable, lived in, with books scattered on tables and soft throws draped over couches. I've put you both in the east wing, Samantha said, showing them to their rooms. Emma, you're here, and David, you're next door. There's a shared bathroom between. I hope that's all right. It's perfect, David assured her, trying not to be overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding them. I'll let you get settled, Samantha said. Meet me on the deck when you're ready. I thought we could take the boat out before dinner. Once she'd left, Emma turned to David, her eyes wide. Dad, she's not just rich. She's like mega rich. This place must be worth millions. Emma, David said firmly, Samantha's wealth doesn't define her. She's still the same person regardless of her bank account. Emma looked skeptical. Is that why you look like you're about to bolt? David sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling very out of place in this temple of wealth. It's just a lot to take in. I knew she was successful, but this is another level entirely. Does it change how you feel about her? Emma asked suddenly, serious. David considered the question. Did it? The Samantha he was reconnecting with was still the woman he loved, intelligent, compassionate, with that same laugh that made his heart skip. But now there was this enormous disparity between them, a gulf of wealth and status that seemed impossible to bridge. I don't know, Em, he admitted finally. It complicates things. Emma sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. I think you are overthinking it. She likes you for you, Dad, not for what you have or don't have. David put his arm around his daughter, marveling at her wisdom. When did you get so smart about relationships? I watch a lot of Netflix, she grinned. They joined Samantha on the deck, and the evening unfolded with surprising ease. They took her boat out on the lake, returning as the sun set behind the mountains. Samantha had prepared a simple but delicious dinner, and they ate on the deck wrapped in blankets against the evening chill, talking and laughing as if they'd known each other for years rather than days. After dinner, Emma excused herself to go finish a book she'd brought, leaving David and Samantha alone by the outdoor fire pit, glasses of wine in hand. This place is magical, David said, watching the flames dance. I can see why you love it. Samantha nodded, her face softened by the firelight. It's the only place I can truly relax. No meetings, no decisions that affect thousands of people, no constant pressure to perform. Is it that bad? David asked, genuinely curious. Running the company. She sighed, taking a sip of wine. Not bad exactly, just relentless. There's always another crisis, another deal, another competitor to outmaneuver. She looked at him. Sometimes I envy the simplicity of working with your hands, creating something tangible. The grass is always greener. David smiled. Trust me, there are days when I'd trade my sawdust-covered jeans for your corner office. Would you, though? She asked, her tone surprisingly vulnerable. Most days I feel like I'm playing a role, the tough, brilliant CEO who never falters, never questions. It's exhausting. David studied her, seeing beyond the polished exterior to the woman underneath, a woman carrying burdens he could scarcely imagine. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think you're doing an amazing job. At all of it. Her smile was soft, grateful. That means more than you know. She hesitated, then asked, why did we lose touch, David, after college? I mean, we said we'd stay connected, but... David stared into his wine glass, searching for the right words. Life got in the way, I suppose. Different paths. Samantha studied him, the firelight casting soft shadows across her face. Is that really it? Because I remember calling you, writing to you. The responses just stopped. David sighed, the old pain resurfacing. You were heading to law school, building this amazing future. I was working construction, barely making ends meet. What did I have to offer you? You, Samantha said simply. Would that have been enough? David challenged gently. Your father never approved of me. Even in college, he had bigger plans for you, and he was right. Look at what you've accomplished. Samantha set down her wine glass, turning to face him fully. My father was wrong about a lot of things, David, including you. She took a deep breath. And yes, I've built this successful career, this life that looks perfect from the outside. But do you know what I've learned? Success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. The vulnerability in her voice caught him off guard. You could have anyone, Samantha. Why reach out to me after all this time? Because no one else has ever understood me the way you did, she admitted. Because when I saw you at that wedding with your daughter, I realized what I've been missing all these years. Someone real. Someone who sees me, not my position or my wealth. David's heart raced as she reached for his hand, her fingers twining with his. I've never stopped thinking about you, David. About what might have been if we'd made different choices. Samantha, he began, but she shook her head. I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I just want a chance to see if there's still something between us worth exploring. David looked at their joined hands, at this woman who had once been his whole world, and who, despite all logic and reason, still made his heart race like no one else ever had. What about all this? He gestured around them at the luxury that surrounded them. I can't compete with this life you've built. I can't provide this for you. Samantha's laugh was soft without a trace of mockery. David, do you think this is what I care about? The house, the company, the money, they're just things. Things that, yes, make life comfortable, but they don't make life meaningful. She squeezed his hand. What I've seen this weekend, the way you are with Emma, the man you've become, that's worth more than all of this combined. David wanted to believe her, wanted it with a desperation that surprised him, but doubt lingered. And what happens when we go back to reality? When you're running your empire and I'm installing kitchen cabinets, how do we bridge that gap? One day at a time, Samantha said, like anyone else trying to make a relationship work. The money, the different careers, those are just external factors, David. They're not who we are. She leaned forward, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames. The question isn't whether we can overcome those differences. It's whether what we feel for each other is worth trying for. And I think it is. Don't you? In that moment, looking into her eyes, David knew she was right. The gap between their worlds seemed less important than the connection they still shared, the understanding that had always existed between them. Yes, he said finally, it's worth trying for. As the fire died down and the night grew colder, they reluctantly went inside. At the top of the stairs outside his bedroom door, David hesitated. Thank you for today, he said softly. For everything. Thank you for coming, Samantha replied, her voice equally soft. She reached up, touching his face gently. Good night, David. The next morning dawned clear and bright. David woke early, a habit from years of construction work. He made his way quietly downstairs, careful not to wake Emma or Samantha. The kitchen was state-of-the-art, but he managed to find the coffee maker and start a pot brewing. While it percolated, he stepped out onto the deck. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting the surrounding mountains like a mirror. The peace of it all was overwhelming after the constant noise and stress of the city. David noticed a loose board on the deck railing, nothing dangerous, but it wobbled slightly when touched. Without thinking, he went to his car and retrieved his small toolbox. He never traveled without it. A few minutes with a screwdriver, and the railing was solid again. Always fixing things, came Samantha's voice from behind him. He turned to find her leaning against the doorframe, a coffee mug in hand, smiling at him. She'd clearly just woken up, her hair tousled, her face free of makeup. She'd never looked more beautiful. Force of habit, he said, putting the screwdriver back in his toolbox. Sorry if I woke you. You didn't. I'm an early riser, too. She handed him a mug of coffee. Cream, no sugar, you still take it the same way. You remembered, he said, touched by the small detail. I remember everything about you, David, she replied simply. They stood side by side, watching the sun rise higher over the lake, a comfortable silence between them. This moment, quiet, unguarded, felt more intimate than anything that had passed between them the night before. Later that morning, they took Samantha's boat out fishing. Emma, to everyone's surprise, caught the biggest trout, beaming with pride as David helped her reel it in. I've never been fishing before, she admitted, examining her catch with a mixture of fascination and squeamishness. First time's the charm, Samantha laughed, snapping a photo of Emma holding up her prize. They hiked through the surrounding woods in the afternoon, Samantha leading them to a small waterfall hidden among the trees. The day passed in a blur of simple pleasures, skipping stones on the lake, preparing dinner together, playing board games as the evening drew in. It was during these ordinary moments that David found himself falling for Samantha all over again, not the polished CEO or the wealthy heiress, but the woman who laughed unrestrainedly when Emma beat her at Scrabble, who knew the names of all the constellations they spotted from the deck, who listened to his woodworking stories with genuine interest. By Sunday afternoon, when it was time to leave, David felt like they'd created their own little world over the weekend, a world where the differences between them didn't matter so much. Emma hugged Samantha tightly before they left, extracting a promise to come see her science fair project the following month. As they stood by the car, Samantha hesitated. David, I'm going to London for business next week, but when I get back, I'd like to take you out to dinner. Just the two of us. I'd like that, David said, his hand finding hers. And maybe, Samantha added a hint of mischief in her smile, you could show me your workshop. I've been thinking about commissioning some custom furniture for the house. David recognized the gesture for what it was, not charity, but a genuine interest in his craft, a way to support his dreams without undermining his pride. I'd be honored, he said, and meant it. As they drove home, the lake house disappearing behind them, David felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was uncertain, the differences between their worlds still real, but for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to the future with hope rather than resignation. Dad, Emma said as they neared Boston, the city skyline appearing in the distance. I'm really happy for you, for both of you. David reached over, squeezing his daughter's hand. Me too, Em, me too. They were about halfway home when his phone rang. The number wasn't one he recognized, but he answered using the car's Bluetooth system. David, it's Jennifer. Emma's body stiffened beside him. Jennifer, Emma's mother, rarely called and never without a reason. Usually a request for something. Jennifer, David kept his voice neutral. What can I do for you? I need to see you. It's important about Emma. Emma shot him a worried look. Jennifer had been largely absent from their lives for years, appearing only sporadically and rarely keeping promises. Whatever it is, you can tell me now, David said, not wanting to drag this out. Not over the phone. Jennifer's voice took on the cajoling tone he remembered all too well. I'll be in Boston next week. We should meet. David glanced at Emma, who was staring straight ahead. Her earlier happiness evaporated. Fine, text me when you're in town. After he hung up, Emma remained silent for several miles. You okay, Em? He finally asked. Why does she always show up when things are going well? Emma's voice was small, vulnerable in a way David hadn't heard in years. I don't know, sweetheart. He reached over and squeezed her hand. But nothing she says or does will change anything between us. You know that, right? Emma nodded, but the carefree mood of the weekend was broken. David felt a familiar weight settling back on his shoulders, the weight of single parenthood, of protecting Emma from disappointment, of navigating the complexity of co-parenting with someone who'd never truly committed to being a parent. As they pulled into their driveway, David's phone buzzed with a text message from Samantha. Thank you for a wonderful weekend. Can't stop smiling. Talk soon. Despite the shadow Jennifer's call had cast, David felt that lightness returning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and he had no illusions that there would be many, having Samantha back in his life made facing them seem possible in a way it hadn't before. Emma caught him smiling at his phone. Samantha. Yeah, he admitted. Good. Emma nodded decisively. You deserve someone who makes you smile like that, Dad. David put his arm around his daughter as they walked toward their modest home, so different from the lakeside mansion they'd just left, but still theirs. So do you, Em, so do you. And as they stepped inside, David found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, they'd both found exactly that. The gallery opening invitation hung on David's refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like Saturn, a gift from Emma for his birthday last year. 5 days had passed since their weekend at the lake house, and the memory of Samantha's touch still lingered on his skin. Her trip to London meant they hadn't seen each other, but text messages flowed between them, little digital lifelines spanning the ocean. David pulled his truck into the parking lot of an upscale apartment complex in Cambridge. This latest cabinet installation job would keep his bank account afloat for another month. The client was a tech executive who wanted custom kitchen cabinets made from reclaimed maple. Beautiful work, but complicated. As he unloaded his tools, his phone vibrated against his hip. Are we still on for the gallery tonight? Can't wait to see both my favorite Carters. We'll pick you up at 7. S. Warmth spread through his chest. He quickly typed a response confirming their plans before turning his attention to the day's work. Each stroke of the sandpaper against wood grain centered him the familiar rhythm, pushing thoughts of Samantha Jennifer and their complicated situation to the background. By late afternoon, with the installation complete and the client delighted, David headed home to prepare for the evening ahead. He arrived to find Emma already dressed, adjusting a headband in her hair. You're home early. Her excitement bubbled over as she twirled in a skirt David hadn't seen before. I found this at the thrift store last weekend. Do you think it looks okay for an art gallery? You look perfect, David replied, marveling at how quickly his little girl was growing up. But where did you get the money for new clothes? I thought your allowance was going toward your telescope fund. Emma's eyes darted away. Mom sent me some money for my birthday. The mention of Jennifer tightened something in David's chest. Emma's birthday was still 2 months away. That's thoughtful of her. Did she call you just texted? Emma fiddled with her bracelet. She wants to meet for lunch on Saturday. This Saturday. David tried to keep his voice neutral, but concern edged into his tone. Jennifer's sudden interest in their lives felt suspiciously timed with Samantha's appearance. What did you tell her? I said I'd think about it. Emma's shoulders slumped slightly. I know she's not reliable, Dad, but maybe this time is different. The hope in his daughter's voice twisted David's heart. How many times had Jennifer promised to show up only to cancel at the last minute? How many birthday cards had arrived weeks late, if at all? We can talk about it after tonight, okay? Let me shower and change before Samantha gets here. Under the hot spray of the shower, David let the water wash away the sawdust and worry. Tonight was supposed to be special. He wouldn't let Jennifer's ghost haunt it. At precisely 7, a sleek black Tesla pulled up outside their modest apartment. Samantha emerged wearing a simple emerald dress that set off her dark hair. The contrast between her vehicle and their neighborhood couldn't have been more stark luxury against peeling paint and chain-link fences. Emma rushed out to greet her, chattering excitedly about the gallery as David locked the front door. He watched the easy rapport between them, something both heartwarming and terrifying. Emma had never bonded with any woman he'd dated, not that there had been many since Jennifer left. This felt different, significant. As they approached the downtown gallery, David noticed the shift in atmosphere, the gleaming storefronts, the well-dressed pedestrians, the absence of the graffiti that decorated his neighborhood. This was Samantha's world. Could he ever truly belong in it? The gallery itself was a converted warehouse space, its industrial beams now supporting track lighting that illuminated vibrant artwork. The exhibition focused on the intersection of traditional craftsmanship and digital technology sculptures, incorporating circuit boards, furniture with embedded LED patterns, textiles woven with conductive thread. David paused before a particularly striking piece, a wooden table whose grain pattern had been enhanced with glowing resin that pulsed in time with music playing throughout the gallery. He ran his fingers along the edge, appreciating the craftsmanship. "It speaks to you, doesn't it, Oedi?" Samantha appeared at his side, offering a glass of wine. "The merging of your world and mine." David took the glass, their fingers brushing. "It's beautiful work. The artist understands that technology should enhance the natural beauty of the wood, not overshadow it. That's precisely what captured my attention about this exhibition." Her eyes sparkled with genuine interest. "I thought it might inspire you, seeing how others bridge traditional craftsmanship with modern innovation." Emma had wandered ahead, engaged in conversation with a young artist whose sculpture incorporated recycled computer parts. "Your daughter has quite the eye," Samantha observed. She asked the sculptor about his material sourcing ethics. Most adults don't think to inquire about that. Pride swelled in David's chest. "She's always been thoughtful that way. Sees connections others miss." They moved through the gallery, stopping occasionally to admire different pieces. David noticed the subtle deference shown to Samantha, the gallery owner's attentiveness, the whispers as she passed. Her status followed her like a shadow, impossible to separate from the woman herself. A tall, impeccably dressed man approached them, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Samantha, what a delightful surprise. I didn't realize you'd be attending tonight." Samantha's posture straightened imperceptibly. "Michael, I mentioned it in yesterday's executive meeting." Michael Williams, the CFO David had met briefly at the previous gallery event. His gaze shifted to David, a flicker of recognition followed by dismissal. "And you brought your friend again." The carpenter's correct, the slight pause before friend, and the emphasis on carpenter, sent a clear message. David bristled but kept his expression neutral. "Custom furniture designer, actually." David gestured to the wooden sculpture nearest them. "This piece shows remarkable craftsmanship in the joinery. Look how the artist used traditional dovetail techniques modified to accommodate the electronic components. The precision required is extraordinary." Michael's eyebrows rose slightly, clearly surprised by David's technical knowledge. "Indeed. Well, Samantha, the Andersons were asking after you. Something about their daughter's internship application." He touched Samantha's elbow and assumed familiarity that made David's jaw tighten. "They're significant shareholders, as you know. I'll find them shortly. Thank you, Michael." Samantha's tone was professional but cool. As Michael walked away, David caught the calculating look he threw over his shoulder. "I get the distinct impression your CFO doesn't approve of me." "Michael doesn't approve of anything that might distract me from the company." Samantha's voice carried a weariness David hadn't heard before. "We're finalizing a major merger with Tetra Tech. The board is watching my every move. And spending time with a carpenter doesn't project the right corporate image." The words came out more bitterly than intended. Samantha's eyes flashed. "What Michael or the board thinks doesn't dictate my personal life. I run that company, not them. I've increased market share by 43% in the 5 years since taking over from my father. If they have a problem with who I drink wine with at art galleries, perhaps they should find a CEO who will lose them money instead." The fierce independence in her voice reminded David of the college student he'd fallen for, brilliant and uncompromising. He felt a smile tugging at his lips. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." The tension broke as Samantha laughed, the sound drawing glances from nearby patrons. "Too late for that. You managed it quite spectacularly when you stopped returning my calls 17 years ago. Before David could respond, Emma bounded over, eyes bright with excitement. Dad, you have to see this artist's work. She makes these amazing tables with hidden compartments, and she said your inlay technique on that rocking chair you showed me pictures of was phenomenally detailed. Her words, they spent the next hour exploring the exhibition, David occasionally offering insights on woodworking techniques, while Samantha explained some of the technological elements. The evening felt magical, suspended between their different worlds. As they were preparing to leave, Samantha was waylaid by a couple that David recognized from business magazines, tech investors with deep pockets. He watched as she shifted seamlessly into CEO mode, her gestures becoming more precise, her smile more measured. She's different when she talks business, Emma observed quietly. Like she puts on armor. David nodded, impressed by his daughter's perception. Everyone shows different sides of themselves in different contexts, Em. You're seeing her professional side. I like her regular side better, the one that taught me how to skip stones at the lake. David squeezed Emma's shoulder. Me too. The drive back to their apartment was filled with animated conversation about the exhibition. Emma had collected business cards from two artists and was already making plans for a science fair project inspired by what she'd seen. As Samantha pulled up in front of their building, the harsh reality of their different lives came into sharp focus. The cracked concrete sidewalk, the flickering street lamp, the distant sound of sirens, all stark contrast to the lake house and gallery world they'd just left. I had a wonderful time, Samantha said as they stood on the sidewalk. Thank you both for coming. Thanks for the ride, Emma replied, and for explaining how that fiber optic sculpture worked. My science teacher is going to flip when I tell her about it. Samantha smiled. You're welcome anytime at the office, Emma. We have a full R&D lab that would blow your mind. David watched his daughter's eyes widen at the invitation. The ease with which Samantha could offer such opportunities he could never provide, sent a complicated mix of gratitude and inadequacy through him. Dad, can I go inside? I want to start sketching ideas for my project before I forget. Emma's question broke through his thoughts. After Emma disappeared inside, an awkward silence fell between them. The night air carried a chill, and Samantha wrapped her arms around herself. Would you like to come in for coffee? David offered, then immediately regretted it. Their small apartment would only emphasize the disparity between their lives. To his surprise, Samantha nodded. I'd like that very much. Inside, David busied himself with the coffee maker while Samantha took in the apartment. It was clean, but worn secondhand furniture, patched curtains, walls that needed fresh paint. Yet there were touches that made it home. Emma's art projects displayed proudly, bookshelves. David had built himself plants thriving on every windowsill. You've created a real home here, Samantha said softly, examining a photo of David and Emma at a science fair. It's warm, lived in. The coffee maker gurgled in the background as David moved to stand beside her. It's not much, but it's ours. It's everything, Samantha replied, her fingers tracing the frame of the photo. My penthouse is 3 times this size and half as welcoming. David handed her a mug of coffee cream, no sugar, just as she'd always taken it. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and neither pulled away immediately. About what happened at the gallery, David began. With Michael, I don't want to cause problems for you at work. Samantha shook her head. Michael has been pushing boundaries since my father hired him. He thinks he should be running the company. She took a sip of coffee. The merger with Tetra Tech is his project. It's complex and potentially lucrative, but the timing feels rushed. He's using it to consolidate power. Sounds like corporate politics is as brutal as they say. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of coding. Lines of text that either work or don't. She looked around the apartment again. Like woodworking, you can see the results of your labor. In my world, success is measured in stock fluctuations and quarterly projections. David leaned against the counter, studying her face in the soft kitchen light. The confident CEO was gone, replaced by a woman who looked tired and slightly lost. What does Samantha want? Not the CEO of Harrison Technologies. She met his gaze, vulnerability evident in her eyes. Conversations that don't revolve around market strategy, people who see me, not my net worth. She set down her coffee mug. You. The simple declaration hung in the air between them. David closed the distance, his hand coming up to touch her face. She leaned into his palm, eyes closing briefly. "I've missed you," she whispered. "Even when I was angry at you for disappearing, I missed you." David's thumb traced the curve of her cheek. "I convinced myself you were better off without me, that I wasn't good enough for you. And now I'm terrified that I still might not be, but I'm willing to try if you are." Samantha answered by rising on her tiptoes, pressing her lips against his. The kiss was gentle, at first tentative, then deepened as 17 years of separation dissolved between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. "I should go," Samantha said, though she made no move toward the door. "Early meeting tomorrow." David nodded reluctantly, dropping his hands from her waist. "I'll walk you out." At her car, Samantha turned to him one more time. "I'm having dinner with the Tetra Tech executives tomorrow night, but I'm free this weekend. Would you like to come over? I'll cook dinner." "Are you sure you want to?" David gestured vaguely at her sleek vehicle, then back at his apartment building. "This thing between us, it's complicated." "The best things usually are." Samantha opened her car door. "Saturday at 7, I'll text you my address." After she drove away, David stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, the cool night air clearing his head. The taste of her lingered on his lips, along with the faint scent of her perfume on his shirt. It felt surreal, like a dream he might wake from at any moment. Inside, he found Emma at the kitchen table sketching ideas for her project. She looked up as he entered, a knowing smile spreading across her face. "You kissed her, didn't you?" David felt heat rise in his cheeks. "That's not how did you? Dad, you're glowing, and your hair is messed up in the back." Emma's grin widened. "Plus, I might have peeked through the blinds." "Emma Carter, were you spying?" "Observing. There's a scientific difference." She returned to her sketch. "So are you guys officially dating now?" David sank into a chair, still processing the events of the evening. "I don't know what we are. It's complicated. Adults always say that when they don't want to admit they have feelings." Emma looked up from her drawing. "You like her. She likes you. What's complicated about that?" "For starters, she's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and I'm a carpenter who can barely make rent some months." Emma rolled her eyes. "That's just external stuff. Mom said I get my dramatics from you, and I'm starting to think she was right." The mention of Jennifer sobered David instantly. "Speaking of your mom, we need to talk about Saturday." Emma's expression clouded. "I know what you're going to say, that I shouldn't get my hopes up, that she might cancel." "I was going to say that if you want to meet her for lunch, I'll drive you." David reached across the table, covering Emma's hand with his own. "But yes, I want you to protect your heart. She doesn't have the best track record." Emma bit her lip, a habit she'd had since childhood when weighing difficult decisions. "Can I think about it?" Samantha invited me to see her company's lab, and that sounds pretty amazing too. "Of course you can think about it. No pressure either way." David squeezed her hand. "And I'm sure Samantha would understand if you needed to reschedule." "What about you? Aren't you meeting Mom too?" David had almost forgotten Jennifer's request to meet with him. "That's different. Adult stuff." "Is it about me?" Emma's perceptiveness could be unnerving sometimes. "Probably, but don't worry about it, okay? I've handled your mom for 13 years. I can handle whatever she throws at us now." As Emma returned to her sketching, David found himself hoping that was true. Jennifer's sudden reappearance in their lives, just as things with Samantha were developing, felt too coincidental to ignore. The next morning brought a text from Jennifer confirming their meeting for Saturday at a cafe downtown. David replied with a brief acknowledgement, then turned his attention to the day's work installing shelves at a bookstore in Somerville. The familiar rhythms of measuring, cutting, and mounting carried him through the day. Working with his hands had always been his refuge, a place where problems had solutions, where effort directly translated to results. Unlike relationships where the rules were unwritten and constantly changing. By Saturday morning, David had made his decision. He would meet with Jennifer, first hear whatever she had to say, then join Samantha for dinner. Emma had ultimately decided to accept her mother's lunch invitation, though anxiety radiated from her as they drove downtown. "What if she doesn't show up?" Emma asked quietly as they neared the restaurant. "Then we'll have lunch together and go for ice cream after." David kept his tone light, though anger simmered beneath the surface. This was exactly why he'd insisted on driving Emma, rather than letting Jennifer pick her up too many times his daughter had waited in vain. But Jennifer was there, seated at a corner table, checking her watch. She looked much the same as when she left them, still beautiful in a carefully maintained way, her blonde hair now highlighted with caramel streaks, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. Emma tensed beside him, her hand gripping his tightly. She came. Of course she did. David forced a smile, though relief mixed with his surprise. I'll pick you up in 2 hours, okay? Call if you need me sooner. After watching Emma slide into the booth across from her mother, David made his way to a nearby coffee shop where he'd agreed to meet Jennifer after her lunch with Emma. He ordered black coffee and claimed a table near the window, trying to quell the anxiety building in his chest. What could Jennifer possibly want after all this time? Child support payments had been automatically deducted from his paycheck for years, and she'd shown minimal interest in Emma's life. The timing with Samantha's reappearance couldn't be coincidental. 2 hours later, almost to the minute, Jennifer walked through the door. She spotted him immediately and crossed the cafe with the confident stride he remembered all too well. David, you look good. She slid into the chair opposite him, setting down an expensive-looking handbag. Carpentry must agree with you. Where's Emma? David's eyes darted to the door, concern immediate. Relax, she wanted to check out the bookstore next door. Said she'd text when she was done. Jennifer stirred sweetener into her coffee. She's grown into quite the young lady, smart as a whip. She is. Pride tempered his wariness. What's this about Jen? You don't usually take an interest in Emma's life unless you need something. Jennifer's smile tightened at the edges. Always straight to the point. That's one thing I actually miss about you. She leaned forward. I'm moving back to Boston. Permanently. And I want to be more involved in Emma's life. The statement hit David like a physical blow. Why now? After 10 years of postcards and missed birthdays. People change, David. I wasn't ready to be a mother then. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the coffee cup. I am now. I've accepted a position at Meridian Partners. I'll be stable, settled. Emma deserves to have her mother in her life. David studied her face, searching for the real motivation. Jennifer had always been calculating, each move serving a purpose beyond the stated one. And this sudden maternal interest has nothing to do with Samantha Harrison. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. Samantha Harrison, the tech CEO. She laughed, the sound brittle. What does she have to do with anything? Don't play games, Jen. You know exactly who she is and that we're seeing each other. The timing of your return is suspicious at best. My. Aiming high these days, aren't we? Jennifer's smile didn't reach her eyes. But no, David, contrary to what your ego might suggest, my life decisions don't revolve around you. I didn't know about your friendship with Miss Harrison until Emma mentioned it at lunch. David wasn't convinced, but before he could press further, Jennifer leaned forward, her expression turning serious. I want joint custody, David. Every other weekend and one night a week to start. We can adjust as Emma gets comfortable. That's not happening. David's response was immediate, visceral. You walked out when she was 3 years old. You can't just waltz back in and demand custody. I'm not demanding, I'm informing. I've already spoken with a lawyer. Jennifer's voice remained calm, reasonable, making David's anger seem disproportionate by contrast. I'm Emma's mother. I have rights. Rights you abandoned a decade ago. David fought to keep his voice down, aware of the other patrons. Emma has stability, routine. She's thriving. I won't let you disrupt that because you've suddenly decided to play mother. It's not up to you. Jennifer withdrew a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. This is my attorney. Have yours contact him. We can do this amicably or not, but it will happen, David. David stared at the card, rage and fear battling within him. Why are you really doing this? Is it money? Because of Samantha. Not everything is about you and your girlfriend. Jennifer cut him off. Maybe I genuinely miss my daughter. Maybe I regret the choices I made. Or maybe I just want what's legally mine. Either way, be prepared. She stood collecting her purse. I'll drop Emma at your place. Consider this conversation the beginning of negotiations. After she left, David remained frozen, the business card burning like a brand on the table before him. His phone buzzed a text from Samantha confirming their dinner plans. The contrast between the two women in his life couldn't have been more stark yet. Both now wielded power that could reshape his and Emma's future. He tucked the lawyer's card into his wallet and left the cafe, mind racing with implications. Jennifer's sudden interest in custody rights, Michael's obvious disapproval, the vast gulf between his world and Samantha's, it was all converging into a perfect storm. The address Samantha had sent led him to a luxury high-rise in Back Bay, its gleaming glass facade reflecting the afternoon sunlight. The doorman greeted him by name. Samantha must have added him to a list and directed him to the private elevator that would take him to the penthouse. The elevator opened directly into a spacious foyer of marble and glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Boston skyline and Charles River beyond. The apartment was exactly what he'd expected from a billionaire CEO, elegant minimalist decorated with what he assumed were original artworks worth more than his annual income. David, Samantha appeared from what must be the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple blouse, her feet bare. The casual attire somehow made her seem more at home in the luxurious surroundings. Right on time. This place is... David struggled to find words that wouldn't betray his discomfort with such ostentatious wealth. Ridiculously oversized for one person. Samantha smiled ruefully. I know, I bought it for the views, but it never quite feels like home. She approached, kissing him softly before leading him deeper into the apartment. I hope you like Italian. I've been attempting to master risotto for months. In the sleek, professional-grade kitchen, 2 wine glasses sat ready beside an open bottle of red. Steam rose from a pot on the stove, and the rich aroma of saffron and parmesan filled the air. Can I help with anything? David offered, accepting the wine she handed him. Just keep me company. It's nice having someone to cook for. Samantha returned to stirring the risotto. How was your day? The question was so ordinary, so domestic, that David almost laughed. Here they were playing at normalcy while his ex-wife threatened legal action, and Samantha's CFO probably plotted to undermine their relationship. I met with Jennifer today. The words came out more abruptly than intended. Emma's mother. Samantha's stirring slowed but didn't stop. I gathered that's who Jennifer was. Is everything okay? She wants joint custody of Emma, after 10 years of minimal contact. David took a large swallow of wine. She's hired a lawyer. Samantha set down her wooden spoon and turned to face him fully. That's unexpected. Did she say why the sudden interest? She claims she's changed, wants to be more involved. I don't buy it. David ran a hand through his hair. The timing is suspicious, right after you and I reconnect. You think I'm the reason? Samantha's brow furrowed. That seems far-fetched, David. How would she even know about us? I don't know, but Jennifer always has angles. Always. The wine was doing nothing to calm his nerves. She made a point of mentioning she knows who you are. Samantha was quiet for a moment, processing. What will you do? Fight her, obviously. Emma's been through enough. David set down his glass harder than intended. I can't afford a lengthy legal battle, but I'll figure something out. Maybe pick up extra jobs, work weekends. Or you could let me help. Samantha's offer was gentle but firm. I know excellent attorneys who specialize in family law. The suggestion, though, pricked at David's pride. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, I offered. Samantha moved closer, taking his hands in hers. This isn't charity, David. It's support. That's what people do when they care about each other. David looked down at their joined hands, hers smooth and manicured, his calloused from years of physical labor. And what happens when this thing between us doesn't work out? When you realize I don't fit into your world of corporate mergers and penthouses? I can't be indebted to you, Samantha. Pain flashed across her features. Is that what you think this is? Some temporary diversion that will end when reality sets in? Isn't it? Look at this place. David gestured around the luxurious apartment. Look at your life, then look at mine. We're from different planets. No, we're just 2 people who took different paths. Frustration edged into Samantha's voice. Why are you so determined to focus on what divides us instead of what connects us? Because I can't ignore reality. Your CFO looks at me like I'm something he scraped off his shoe. Your board would probably have a collective heart attack if they knew you were dating a carpenter. And now my ex-wife is threatening to take my daughter. The pressure that had been building since Jennifer's ultimatum erupted. I can't lose Emma. She's everything to me. No one's taking Emma from you. Samantha's tone was fierce protective. Not while I have anything to say about it. And as for Michael and the board, they work for me, not the other way around. The conviction in her voice momentarily stunned David. In that moment, he could see clearly the formidable businesswoman who had built an empire determined, unwavering, accustomed to overcoming obstacles. I appreciate the sentiment, but this is my battle to fight. David softened his tone, regret replacing anger. I shouldn't have brought this to your doorstep. You have enough on your plate with the merger. Stop doing that. Samantha stepped closer, eyes flashing. Stop deciding for me what I can handle or what I want. I'm not some delicate flower who needs protection from real-world problems. I never said you were, but this is my mess, not yours. And if I want it to be mine too, if I want to stand with you. The vulnerability beneath her strength was suddenly apparent. What then, David? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither was fully ready to explore. Before David could formulate a response, Samantha's phone chimed with the distinctive tone she'd set for work emergencies. Her shoulders slumped slightly as she checked the screen. It's Michael. The Tetra Tech legal team has raised last-minute concerns about the merger terms. Conflict played across her features. I need to handle this. Of course. David nodded, a mix of relief and disappointment washing over him. Work comes first. No, not first, but it does require my attention right now. She squeezed his hand. Give me 20 minutes. We're not done with this conversation. As Samantha disappeared into her home office, David wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled beneath him like a glittering carpet. His reflection stared back, a man out of place in this world of luxury, carrying the weight of an uncertain future. His phone vibrated with a text from Emma. Mom brought me home. She wants to take me shopping next weekend. Is that okay? The simple request twisted something in David's gut. Jennifer was moving quickly, establishing herself in Emma's life before legal proceedings could begin. It was a smart strategy and exactly the kind of calculated move he'd expected. Behind him, Samantha emerged from her office, frustration evident in her posture. I'm sorry, that was longer than expected. Everything okay with the merger? David asked, turning from the window. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. She approached, determination in her eyes. Now, where were we? Fall descended on Boston with a palette of russet and gold painting the public garden in warm hues that matched David's mood as he walked to his latest installation job. 3 months had passed since his confrontation with Jennifer, and while the custody battle loomed on the horizon, other aspects of his life had taken unexpected turns for the better. The email that had arrived in his inbox that morning still seemed surreal. A high-end interior design firm, one whose work appeared in architectural magazines David could never afford to subscribe to, had requested a meeting to discuss commissioning multiple pieces for a luxury condominium development downtown. The sender mentioned having seen his work in a private collection and being impressed by his craftsmanship. David knew exactly which private collection they meant. Samantha had commissioned a coffee table from him last month, her way of supporting his work without making it feel like charity. She'd insisted on paying his full asking price, even when he'd quoted her a figure he thought was ambitious. The table now sat in her penthouse living room, its maple surface inlaid with a subtle pattern of walnut that echoed the Boston skyline visible through her windows. Autumn sunlight filtered through the canopy of trees above him as David reached for his phone. Emma had a half-day at school, and he wanted to check if she'd made it to her friend's house as planned. The custody arrangement with Jennifer was still tentative, informal weekend visits while their lawyers negotiated, but even this limited contact had created ripples of change in Emma's behavior. Some days she returned from her mother's apartment quiet and withdrawn, other times bubbling with excitement over shopping trips and restaurant outings that David could never afford. As he scrolled through his messages, an incoming call from a number he didn't recognize illuminated his screen. Normally, he'd let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but with potential new clients in the mix, he couldn't afford to miss an opportunity. David Carter speaking. The voice on the other end was polished professional. Mr. Carter, this is Elaine Winters from Artisanal Habitats. We received your portfolio through a mutual acquaintance and would like to discuss a potential collaboration for our Harbor View project. David's pulse quickened. Artisanal Habitats was one of the most prestigious design firms in New England, known for incorporating bespoke furnishings into their high-end residential developments. I'd be very interested in hearing more. Wonderful. Our creative director was particularly impressed with your inlay work. Could you meet tomorrow at our offices to discuss specifics? We're looking to commission several signature pieces for the model units. After confirming the details, David ended the call, a mixture of excitement and suspicion coursing through him. The timing was too perfect, the opportunity too aligned with his needs. Had Samantha arranged this? Despite her promise not to interfere with his career, he couldn't shake the feeling that her influence hovered at the edges of this opportunity. That evening, when Emma was engrossed in homework, David called Samantha. Their relationship had deepened over the past months, settling into a rhythm that accommodated both their hectic schedules. Weeknight dinners when possible, weekends together, when Emma wasn't with Jennifer, quiet evenings at David's apartment or her penthouse where they could simply exist in each other's company. "You received a call from Artisanal Habitats today, didn't you?" Samantha's voice carried a note of excitement that confirmed his suspicions. "How did you know that?" "Because they called me first. About your coffee table." David sat down trying to process this information. "You showed them my work." "Not exactly. Elaine Winters came over for a foundation meeting last week and couldn't stop admiring it. Asked who the artist was. I gave her your contact information." "That's it." "That's it, Samantha. Artisanal Habitats doesn't just call unknown furniture makers out of the blue. They're not calling an unknown furniture maker. They're calling a talented artisan whose work impressed their creative director. Your work, David, not your connection to me." The conversation continued in this vein, with David struggling between gratitude for the opportunity and concern about appearing to succeed through connections rather than merit. Eventually, Samantha's frustration broke through. "You know what's exhausting? Watching someone you care about sabotage their own success because they're afraid it might not be earned enough. Do you think clients in the real world care how you got your first big break? They care about quality, reliability, and whether you can deliver what they need." Her words struck a nerve, not because they were harsh, but because they contained a truth David had been avoiding. "I just don't want to be seen as your charity project." "No one sees you that way except you." The softness returned to her voice. "I believe in your talent. Why can't you?" The question lingered in David's mind as he ended the call and turned his attention to the stack of bills on his kitchen table. Jennifer's push for joint custody had necessitated hiring an attorney whose retainer had depleted David's modest savings. The possibility of steady high-end commissions couldn't have come at a better time. The next morning, David, dressed in his best clothes, still far from the tailored suits worn by Artisanal Habitats executives, and took the train downtown. The firm occupied the top floor of a renovated textile factory, its industrial bones elegantly preserved beneath modern finishes. Glass-walled conference rooms which showcased scale models of luxury developments, while the open-plan workspace hummed with creative energy. Elaine Winters greeted him with a firm handshake and led him to a sunlit meeting room where three other people waited. "This is our creative director, Marcus Chen, and our project managers for Harborview, Lydia Nolan and James Perry." The meeting proceeded better than David could have hoped. Marcus asked insightful questions about David's techniques and material preferences, while Lydia outlined their vision for the Harborview units, a blend of modern luxury and traditional craftsmanship that aligned perfectly with David's aesthetic. By the time James presented the preliminary commission offer, David was struggling to maintain his professional demeanor in the face of figures that exceeded his most optimistic estimates. "We'd need the first pieces, dining tables and credenzas for the 3 model units completed within 4 months, Elaine explained. "The full development commission would follow contingent on client response. That's potentially 18 more units over the next 2 years. 2 years of guaranteed high-end work. The stability this could provide for him and Emma was almost unimaginable. No more worrying about making rent, no more putting off repairs on his aging truck, no more saying no when Emma needed something for school. "We're not the only firm bidding for your services, of course." Marcus's comment caught David off guard. "Your connection to Harrison Technologies has put you on several radar screens. I believe Johnson and Meyer approached you last week." David maintained his poker face despite his confusion. No one from Johnson and Meyer had contacted him. "I'm still considering all options, but I'm particularly impressed by Artisanal Habitat's commitment to showcasing the craftsperson behind the work." The remainder of the meeting passed in a blur of technical discussions and scheduling logistics. As David left the building with the contract to review and a substantial deposit check promised upon signing, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Mom wants me to come for dinner tonight. Says she has news. Okay if I go?" David's good mood deflated slightly. These impromptu invitations from Jennifer had become more frequent, each one chipping away at the structured custody schedule their lawyers were attempting to establish. Still, he couldn't justify denying Emma time with her mother. "Okay, I'll pick you up at 8:30. His next message was to Samantha, canceling their dinner plans with an abbreviated explanation. Her response came quickly. "No problem. I have merger documents to review anyway. Call me later. Proud of you for the meeting." By late afternoon, David was back in his workshop, a rented garage space a few blocks from his apartment that smelled perpetually of sawdust and varnish. The familiar environment soothed him as he began sketching concepts for the artisanal Habitats Commission, losing himself in the creative process until his alarm reminded him it was time to pick up Emma. Jennifer's new apartment occupied the 7th floor of a luxury building in Back Bay, not quite Samantha's level of opulence, but far beyond anything Jennifer could have afforded during their marriage. David waited in the lobby, uncomfortable with the doorman's scrutiny of his work clothes and scuffed boots. When Emma emerged from the elevator, her expression was difficult to read, a mixture of excitement and uncertainty that immediately put David on alert. "Everything okay, Em?" David asked as they walked to his truck. "Mom got a new job, a big promotion." Emma fastened her seatbelt, gaze fixed on the passing streetlights. "At Harrison Enterprises." The word struck David like a physical blow. "Harrison Enterprises, are you sure it's the same company?" "Mom said she'll be working directly with the CFO, Michael Williams." Emma finally looked at him, concern evident in her eyes. "Isn't that Samantha's company? Is this bad?" David gripped the steering wheel tighter, mind racing. Jennifer working for Samantha's company couldn't be coincidence. But why the connection made no sense until he remembered Michael's obvious disdain at their first meeting, his protective attitude toward Samantha, the warning about significant investors watching her choices. "Did your mom say anything else about how she got the job?" "Just that Mr. Williams was impressed with her experience in financial analysis. And that she starts next week." Emma's voice dropped. "Dad is Mom doing this to cause trouble for you and Samantha?" The perception in his daughter's question shouldn't have surprised him. Emma had always been observant, piecing together the undercurrents of adult relationships with uncanny accuracy. "I don't know, Em. Maybe it really is just a good job opportunity." But David didn't believe that, and from Emma's skeptical expression, neither did she. Once home, he waited until Emma was in bed before calling Samantha. Her phone went straight to voicemail, unusual but not alarming, given the merger preparations that had been consuming her attention lately. Instead, he sent a text, "Need to talk when you are free. Jennifer took a job with Michael at Harrison Enterprises. Not sure what's happening, but felt you should know." Sleep eluded him that night, his mind churning with possibilities, none of them good. By morning, Samantha still hadn't responded, more concerning now, given the importance of his message. He tried calling again while making Emma's breakfast, but the result was the same. "Still can't reach Samantha?" Emma asked, pouring milk over her cereal. "She's probably caught up in merger preparations. The Tetra Tech deal is finalizing this week." David tried to sound casual, though unease gnawed at him. "She mentioned having to review documents last night." Emma nodded, though doubt lingered in her expression. "Mom said something weird yesterday about how businesses need to protect their reputations." "What was the context?" "We were talking about my science project, the one about corporate environmental responsibilities. Mom said sometimes companies have to make hard choices about who represents them publicly." Emma stirred her cereal thoughtfully. Then she mentioned Samantha might be facing some tough choices soon. The implication in Jennifer's words chilled David. Before he could respond, his phone rang, an unknown number with a Boston area code. "Mr. Carter, this is Gloria Chen from Harrison Enterprises Legal Department. Ms. Harrison asked me to contact you regarding an urgent matter. Could you come to our offices today at 11? The formal request, coming through a legal intermediary rather than from Samantha, directly intensified David's concern. "Is Samantha all right?" "Ms. Harrison is in meetings all morning. She requested that I arrange this conversation as soon as possible." Gloria's tone revealed nothing. 11th floor, Harrison Tower. Please check in with reception." Harrison Tower dominated the Boston skyline, its glass and steel facade reflecting clouds and sunlight in equal measure. David had never visited Samantha's workplace before. Their relationship had existed entirely separate from her professional life, a boundary she'd established early on to protect them both from corporate politics and media scrutiny. The security desk directed him to an express elevator that whisked him to the executive floor. The reception area exuded the quiet power of serious money, understated furnishings whose simplicity belied their cost, abstract art that probably carried six-figure price tag staff who moved with the efficient grace of those accustomed to handling important people. Mr. Carter. The receptionist's smile was practiced, revealing nothing. Ms. Chen will be with you shortly. May I offer you something to drink? David declined too tense for pleasantries. What could be so urgent that Samantha would summon him to her office through legal channels? His mind circled back to Jennifer's new position, to Michael's obvious disapproval to the timing of it all. David. Gloria Chen appeared in the reception area, hand extended. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please follow me. She led him not to an office, but to a small conference room with frosted glass walls. Inside, Samantha waited, not seated at the table as he'd expected, but standing by the window, her posture rigid with tension. She wore a tailored navy suit that emphasized her authority, her hair pulled back in a severe style he'd never seen before. Thank you, Gloria. Could you give us the room, please? Samantha's voice carried none of the warmth David had come to associate with their private conversations. Only when the door closed did her expression soften slightly. I'm sorry for the formality. Things are complicated right now. Jennifer working for Michael, complicated or something else? David remained standing the distance between them, feeling both physical and emotional. Both and more. Samantha gestured to a chair, finally taking one herself. The Tetra Tech merger is in its final stages. The board votes tomorrow. And this concerns me. How exactly? Michael has been gathering information about our relationship, using it to suggest I'm emotionally compromised, making poor judgment calls. Samantha's fingers traced an invisible pattern on the table's surface. But now he's hired your ex-wife into our financial analysis team, a woman with no previous connection to tech or venture capital, to spy on you, to get information about us. The pieces were falling into place, each one more disturbing than the last. Likely both. Jennifer's hiring went through unusual channels. Michael bypassed normal HR protocols, claiming urgent need in his department. Given the timing and your text last night, I don't believe in coincidences. David's jaw tightened. So Michael is what trying to force you out, take control of the company. He's positioning himself as a stable alternative if I'm perceived as unreliable. The merger represents billions in potential value, and the board is nervous. Michael's been subtly undermining me for months, suggesting my personal life is affecting my judgment. Because of me. The realization landed like a stone in David's stomach. I'm the liability. No, Samantha's response was immediate, forceful. Michael's manipulation is the liability. He's playing on outdated perceptions and corporate politics to advance his own agenda. But he's using our relationship as leverage, and now he's recruited Jennifer to help him. David ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. What does he think she can provide? We've been divorced for a decade. Information, embarrassing details, anything that makes you, and by extension me, look unstable or untrustworthy. Samantha's expression hardened. And there's something else. The custody situation with Emma. David's protective instincts flared. What about it? Jennifer's lawyer contacted our legal department yesterday. Apparently, she's planning to argue that your relationship with me creates an unstable environment for Emma due to media attention and corporate pressures. The calculated cruelty of this strategy left David momentarily speechless. Jennifer was weaponizing his relationship with Samantha not only against him, but against the company she now worked for. She can't possibly think that would work. In court, probably not, but in the court of public opinion, in the nervous minds of board members and shareholders, Samantha's expression revealed how seriously she took the threat. Michael is creating a narrative where my personal choices endanger the company's stability. Your ex-wife is providing ammunition. So what now? You end things with me to protect your company. The question emerged more bitterly than intended, exposing the insecurity that had lingered beneath their relationship from the beginning. Is that what you think of me, that I'd abandon someone I care about because it's commercially expedient? Hurt flashed across Samantha's features. I built this company from what my father left me, quadrupled its value, created technologies that changed industries. I didn't do that by letting manipulative men dictate my choices. The fierceness in her voice reminded David of why he'd fallen for her in the first place. Her unwavering determination, her refusal to be diminished by others' expectations. Then what's your plan? First, to understand exactly what we're facing. I have people investigating Michael's activities over the past 6 months. Financial transactions, communication patterns, unusual meetings. If he's conspiring against me, there will be evidence. And Jennifer, that's more complicated. Her hiring can't be undone without creating exactly the kind of drama Michael wants. But I can ensure she's placed in a position with limited access to sensitive information and little direct contact with him. David shook his head, the corporate maneuvering foreign to his straightforward nature. This feels like we're playing chess while they're playing demolition derby. What about Emma? How do I protect her from being used as a pawn? I've already spoken with Caroline Levinson. She's the best family law attorney in Massachusetts. She's expecting your call. Samantha held up a hand as David began to protest. Before you object to my interference, consider that this situation involves both of us now. Jennifer is using your relationship with me against you. That makes it my concern too. The logic was sound, but David's pride still bristled at accepting such significant help. I can't afford someone like Caroline Levinson. You can with the Artisanal Habitats Commission. Samantha's expression softened slightly. Which you earned entirely on your own merits, as evidenced by Johnson & Meyer now pursuing you as well. Johnson & Meyer never contacted me. They will, today or tomorrow. Marcus Chen mentioned your work to their design director at a charity event last week. A ghost of a smile touched Samantha's lips. Your talent is creating its own momentum, David. Separate from me, separate from any of this mess. The revelation eased some of the tension that had been building in David's chest. If his work truly was being recognized independently, perhaps he wasn't merely a liability to Samantha. Perhaps he had more to offer than he'd believed. So we fight, both battles, your company, my daughter. We fight smart, Samantha corrected. Michael expects emotional reactions. Jennifer anticipates you'll be defensive and angry. We need to be strategic. The conversation shifted to practical matters, legal strategies for the custody case, corporate maneuvers to secure the board's confidence before the merger vote. Throughout, David noted how Samantha's CEO persona blended with the woman he'd come to care for, deeply analytical, yet compassionate, strategic, yet principled. As their meeting concluded, Samantha checked her watch. I have to prepare for a board presentation. But before you go, there's something else we should discuss. Her tone shifted, becoming more personal. The penthouse never felt like home to me. I've been thinking about selling it. The abrupt change in topic caught David off guard. Why now in the middle of everything else? Because everything else has clarified what matters to me, where I want to invest my energy. Samantha's expression softened fully now, the corporate mask falling away. I found a house in Cambridge, older with character. Good schools nearby, a garden, room for a workshop. The implication in her words was unmistakable. David's pulse quickened. Samantha, are you asking? I'm not asking anything yet, just sharing a possibility. Her gaze held his, vulnerable yet certain. When this storm passes, and it will pass, I want us to have a conversation about building something together. Something real. Not my life or your life, but our life. The simplicity of the sentiment, delivered in the midst of such complex circumstances, struck David with unexpected force. Here was Samantha Harrison, Billionaire CEO, one of the most powerful women in tech, essentially saying she wanted a future with him and Emma. Why me? The question escaped before he could reconsider it, the same doubt that had haunted him since their reconnection. You could have anyone, someone from your world, someone who wouldn't complicate your life this way. Because I've spent 17 years surrounded by people who want something from me, my money, my influence, my connections. You're the only person who's ever been reluctant to accept anything I offer. A genuine smile transformed her face. And because when I'm with you, I'm just Samantha again, not the CEO, not the heiress, not the public figure, just me. As David left Harrison Tower, the autumn sunlight felt warmer somehow, despite the challenges ahead. He had two battles to fight, one for his daughter, one alongside Samantha against corporate intrigue, but for the first time, he didn't feel as though he faced them alone. The next morning brought news that the Harrison Enterprises board had approved the Tetra Tech merger, a vote of confidence in Samantha's leadership, despite Michael's machinations. David received this update via text while meeting with Caroline Levinson, whose office overlooked Boston Common. The attorney's reputation was well-earned. She quickly dissected Jennifer's custody strategy, identifying its weaknesses and outlining a counter-approach that emphasized David's consistent presence in Emma's life against Jennifer's decade of minimal involvement. Your ex-wife's sudden interest coinciding with your relationship with Samantha Harrison will raise judicial eyebrows. Carolyn noted, organizing documents with efficient precision. Courts are generally skeptical of parents who reappear after long absences, especially when financial motives might be inferred. Financial motives? David hadn't considered this angle. Ms. Harrison's wealth creates potential for claims that Jennifer is seeking proximity to those resources through Emma, particularly given her new employment at Harrison Enterprises. Carolyn's expression remained professionally neutral. It's a delicate balance. We want to highlight the suspicious timing without directly accusing your ex-wife of ulterior motives. The meeting continued with discussion of visitation schedules, legal precedents, and witness strategies. By the time David left, he felt more confident about retaining primary custody, though the process ahead would be emotionally draining for all involved, especially Emma. His daughter waited at home, having opted out of her weekend visit with Jennifer after learning about the legal filings. Emma sat at the kitchen table, notebooks spread before her, though David suspected little homework was being accomplished. "How was your meeting with the lawyer?" Emma looked up, her expression far too serious for a 13-year-old. "Productive. Caroline thinks we have a strong case." David set his keys down, choosing his next words carefully. "Em, I need to ask you something important. If you had to choose where to live, with me or with your mom, what would you want?" Emma closed her notebook, considering the question with a maturity that both impressed and saddened David. "I want to stay with you, Dad. I always have." She hesitated. "I like seeing Mom sometimes, but she doesn't really know me. She buys me things and takes me places, but she never asks about what matters to me." The simple honesty in her assessment tightened David's throat. "The judge will probably ask you similar questions. You should answer honestly, whatever that answer is, even if it's not what I want to hear." "I know." Emma's gaze was steady. "I also want to tell the judge that I like Samantha, that she makes you happy, that she actually listens when I talk about science and doesn't just nod and change the subject like Mom does." David crossed the kitchen and hugged his daughter, overwhelmed by her perceptiveness and loyalty. "When did you get so wise, huh?" "Probably around the time Mom left and I had to help you figure out how to braid my hair." Emma's attempt at humor carried an edge of old pain, quickly covered with a more pressing concern. "Is Samantha okay with everything at her company?" "She's handling it. The board approved her merger today." David released Emma but remained crouched at her level. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Samantha is thinking of selling her penthouse. She's looking at a house in Cambridge." Emma's eyebrows rose. "A house with room for us?" The directness of the question caught David off guard. "That's a possibility we might discuss, eventually, if that's something you'd be comfortable with." "Dad," Emma's expression suggested she was dealing with someone particularly dense. "I've been waiting for you to figure this out for months. Samantha makes you happy. You make her happy. It's not complicated." The straightforward logic of his daughter's assessment startled a laugh from David. "There are a lot of factors to consider, Em. It's a big step. Bigger than letting Mom back into our lives after 10 years. Bigger than fighting Michael, whatever his name is, and his corporate schemes." Emma shook her head in exasperation. "Adults make easy things hard and pretend hard things are impossible. It's exhausting." The wisdom in her observation struck David silent for a moment. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps he'd been complicating the simple truth that he loved Samantha and wanted a future with her. A future that included Emma and the family they could build together. Later that evening, as Emma finished her homework, David called Samantha. The conversation ranged from updates on their respective battles to more personal matters, her house hunting progress, his design concepts for the Artisanal Habitats Commission. Johnson and Meyer reached out today. David mentioned, still slightly amazed by this development. They want to discuss a permanent installation for their headquarters lobby. "I told you your work would create its own momentum." The pride in Samantha's voice warmed him. You're going to need a bigger workshop soon. Actually, I've been thinking about that. There's a space for lease in Somerville, an old warehouse with good natural light, more square footage than I currently have, with room for expansion. David had viewed the property earlier that day, its potential immediately apparent, despite the necessary renovations. Sounds perfect. When can I see it? You want to see my potential workshop space? The question emerged more surprised than intended. Of course I do. It's important to you, which makes it important to me. The simplicity of her statement belied its significance. Besides, if we're considering joining our lives, I should understand your work environment just as you understand mine. The phrase joining our lives lingered between them, neither fully addressing its implications, yet both acknowledging its weight. Their conversation drifted to the upcoming weekend, Emma's science fair, a potential drive to see the Cambridge house. Samantha was considering dinner at a restaurant they all enjoyed. Plans, future, together. The concepts no longer seemed like impossible fantasies, but attainable realities despite the obstacles still facing them. The following week brought developments on multiple fronts. Michael Williams abruptly resigned from Harrison Enterprises, citing personal reasons, in a press release that notably lacked Samantha's quote. Industry insiders speculated about internal power struggles, but the company's stock remained stable, the Tetra Tech merger proceeding on schedule. Jennifer's initial custody hearing was scheduled for the following month, though Caroline Levinson expressed confidence that the judge would maintain the status quo until a final determination could be made. Most surprisingly, Jennifer herself seemed to be reconsidering her approach, requesting a mediation session rather than proceeding directly to litigation. She lost her corporate backing, Samantha suggested when David shared this news. Without Michael feeding her information and strategy, she's reassessing her position. The theory made sense, especially when Jennifer's employment at Harrison Enterprises ended after just 2 weeks, another resignation for personal reasons that aligned suspiciously with Michael's departure. By early December, as the first snow dusted Boston's streets, David signed the lease on the Somerville warehouse space. The timing coincided with the completion of his first pieces for Artisanal Habitat's 3 dining tables, whose craftsmanship had exceeded even his own exacting standards. Samantha accompanied him to the installation, watching from a discreet distance as the design team positioned his work in the model unit. Her presence, supportive without interfering, embodied the partnership they'd been building, each respecting the other's professional domain while sharing in their successes. "They're going to sell every unit in this building because of your tables," Samantha murmured as they left the site. "You know that, right? One craftsman's contribution doesn't sell luxury condominiums. It does when that craftsman creates pieces that make people feel something." Samantha's gloved hand found his as they walked toward her car. "That's always been your gift, David. You don't just build furniture, you create objects that carry emotion." The observations, so different from the technical compliments he typically received, touched something deep within David. Samantha saw his work the way he experienced it himself, not merely as demonstrations of skill, but as expressions of something more fundamental. They drove from the installation site to view the Cambridge house again, their third visit in 2 weeks. The historic colonial sat on a tree-lined street within walking distance of excellent schools, its weathered brick exterior concealing surprisingly modern interiors. The previous owner, an architect, had renovated with respect for original details while creating open spaces flooded with natural light. Most importantly, the property included a carriage house, perfect for a conversion to a workshop. David had already sketched preliminary plans for the space, envisioning where machinery would be positioned, how natural light would be maximized, storage solutions for his expanding collection of specialty woods. "Emma loves the third-floor bedroom," Samantha noted as they toured the rooms again. "She's already planning where her telescope would go for optimal stargazing. She's getting ahead of herself. We haven't even made an offer." David tried to sound cautious, though he had already fallen in love with the property himself. "Actually, Samantha hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I made an offer yesterday. It was accepted this morning." David stopped mid-step, turning to face her in the center of what could be their living room. "You bought this house without discussing it with me. I secured the option to buy it. Nothing's final." Samantha held his gaze, vulnerable yet determined. "The market's moving quickly. 3 other buyers were circling. I didn't want to lose it while we were still figuring things out." "Figuring what out exactly?" The question emerged more challenge than inquiry, old insecurities surfacing despite months of building trust. Whether you're ready for this, for us, for building a life together that isn't defined by your world or my world, but something we create together. Samantha gestured around the empty room, sunlight streaming through mullioned windows to cast patterns across hardwood floors. I believe in this possibility, David. I believe in us. Do you? The directness of her question demanded equal honesty. David took a deep breath, ammoning the fears that had held him back, fears of inadequacy, of dependence, of failing to be enough for this extraordinary woman. I do believe in us, in what we could build together. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. But I need to contribute equally. Not financially, we both know that's impossible, but in every other way. This needs to be our home, not your home that you let us live in. That's exactly what I want. Samantha moved closer, taking both his hands in hers. I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. But I've never had a true partnership. Never had someone who sees me, really sees me beyond the wealth and position. You give me that, David. You and Emma both. The simplicity of her declaration cut through complexities that had seemed insurmountable months ago. Standing in the empty room that could become their home, David recognized the truth they'd been circling. Some differences didn't matter in the face of what connected them. So where does that leave us? David squeezed her hands gently. You've bought a house we might share. What's next? Next is whatever we decide together. Samantha's smile held equal parts certainty and question. I love you, David. I think I've loved you since college, even through all the years apart. I love Emma too, for herself and for the amazing father she's helped you become. The declaration, spoken plainly in the afternoon light, swept away the last of David's hesitation. I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to fully believe this could work. But it already is working, isn't it? Despite everything we've faced. Because of everything we've faced. Samantha's expression softened. Pressure reveals character. These past months have shown me exactly who you are and made me more certain than ever that you're who I want to build a life with. Their kiss, gentle at first, then deepening with shared certainty, sealed a promise unspoken but understood. When they finally separated, David felt a clarity that had eluded him since their reconnection. Let's make an offer on the house, he said, then laughed at Samantha's confused expression. I mean, let me buy it from you, with a proper mortgage that I pay. We can structure it however makes sense legally, but I need to own my home, Sam. Our home. Understanding dawned in her eyes. A partnership, equal in commitment if not in finances. Exactly. You've built your empire. Let me build something too, our family, our future. David gestured toward the carriage house visible through the window. My business is growing. I can contribute meaningfully even if not equally in dollar terms. You've already contributed the most valuable thing. Samantha's voice softened. You've given me a chance to be truly happy. Not CEO happy or wealthy happy, but genuinely personally fulfilled. As they left the house, their future home snow began falling again, dusting the brick walkway with crystalline white. The practical details would take time to arrange: Emma's transition to a new school, David's workshop relocation, the legal structures of their shared life. Jennifer remained a variable in the equation, though recent communications suggested she might be retreating from her aggressive custody position. But standing in the gentle December snow, these challenges seemed manageable, even welcome as part of building something lasting. David wrapped an arm around Samantha's shoulders, drawing her close against the cold. 1 year ago, I was dreading Tyler's wedding, worried about making rent, convinced my life would never change. David watched snowflakes catch in Samantha's dark hair, each one perfect and temporary. Now everything's different. Not everything. Samantha looked up at him, snow melting on her eyelashes. The important parts were always there. We just needed to find each other again, to recognize them. 6 months later, as spring blossoms gave way to early summer greenery, David stood in his new workshop, applying the final coat of finish to a dining table that would serve as the centerpiece of their home. Through the open doors, he could see Emma helping Samantha plant herbs in the garden, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. The custody issues with Jennifer had resolved more peacefully than expected. After mediation revealed the weakness of her position, she'd agreed to regular visitation without pursuing joint custody. Her new job in Chicago, legitimate this time, with no connection to Harrison Enterprises, provided both distance and a fresh start that benefited everyone involved. David ran his hand along the edge of the table, feeling the seamless join where different woods met. The piece incorporated elements from all their lives: walnut from trees that had grown on Samantha's family property, maple salvaged from the renovation of their Cambridge home, and a small inlay of cherry wood from the first project David and Emma had completed together when she was 8 years old. Like the table, their lives had merged, not without effort, not without adjustments, but with an integrity that felt right. Different grains, different colors, different strengths coming together to create something stronger and more beautiful than its individual components. Through the window, David watched as Samantha looked up from the garden, catching his eye, with a smile that still made his heart race. She said something to Emma, who nodded and continued planning, while Samantha made her way toward the workshop. "The table looks incredible," Samantha said as she entered, careful not to disturb the freshly finished surface. "I can't believe how you've incorporated all those elements so seamlessly." "That's the art of it," David replied, setting aside his tools, "finding how different pieces want to fit together, respecting the nature of each while creating something new." "Sounds like a metaphor for us." Samantha moved beside him, surveying the table with appreciation born of months watching him work. "The board approved the executive restructuring plan this morning. I'll be shifting to executive chairperson by year's end." The news, though expected, still surprised David with its timing. "You're really doing it, stepping back from day-to-day operations, stepping forward into a more balanced life." Samantha's hand found his fingers intertwining naturally. "Tetra Tech is fully integrated. Our market position is stronger than ever. The company doesn't need me micromanaging every decision anymore." And what will Samantha Harrison do with all that reclaimed time? David already knew the answer, had watched her priorities shift gradually over the past year. Live, create the Harrison Foundation's educational initiatives, travel with my family. Her smile widened. Maybe even learn woodworking from this incredibly talented craftsman I happen to be in love with. The future stretched before them, not perfect or without challenges, but fundamentally sound like a well-crafted piece of furniture built to last generations. Different worlds had merged to create something entirely new, something neither could have built alone. Through the workshop window, they watched Emma, successful in her gardening efforts, her growing confidence, a testament to the stability they'd created together. Different paths had led them here, to this home, this family, this shared life, proving that sometimes the longest routes led to the most perfect destinations. "I never thought I'd find my way back to you," David said softly, arms slipping around Samantha's waist. "Or that if I did, we could make this work. Some things are worth waiting 17 years for." Samantha leaned into him, their silhouettes merging in the golden afternoon light. "Some things are simply meant to be."